Hey guys, first regardsman here. I'll be talking about every single perk in Space Marine 2 patch 10.3 and just talk about the overall state of perk balance in Space Marine 2. Now, Space Marine 2 has been out for over a year now. This game has a lot of terrible perks in it still. Some of the best trees like Assaults here, where we have this column here that just has 3 great options. This should be the standard for the entire game, but unfortunately, we do not live in that world yet. So I'm going to be going through the classes here and just talking about this, then give you my overall thoughts on just like Saber and Raptor's balance and their decision making in general. So first up, we have the Tactical. Now, Tactical's first tree with Balance Distribution and Plasma Boost. Balance Distribution reads your primary weapon deals 10% more damage, but your secondary weapon deals 10% less damage. This perk is okay. It's not like the worst thing ever. Losing 10% damage on your secondary does suck. Plasma Boost is by far the best perk in this tree, in my opinion. When plasma weapons are 30% overheated, their damage increases by 40%, and their charge shots use 1 less energy. This basically turns a plasma pistol into like the go-to secondary weapon in the game for this class, because you lose basically nothing for using this. Now, the perk down here, Crack and Penetrator rounds, bolt weapons penetrate 1 more enemy. This perk sucks, and it's perks like these that make me wonder what we are doing as far as perk balance goes in Space Marine 2. There is pretty much no reason to take this unless you have like a Bolt Carbine, but even then, the Bolt Carbine is better off using the balance distribution to get that extra damage on it, because it really benefits from the 10% bonus versus having like 1 more penetration. Perks like this should simply be reworked, in my opinion, as far as the the tactical class goes. Now, the next perk I want to talk about here is Relentless Pursuit. After a gun strike, range damage increases by 25% for 5 seconds. This perk, on first glance, sounds pretty good. A 25% range damage increase for 5 seconds, that's really strong. But the thing is, usually your gun strikes will be off of a parry, especially for most players because they don't use block weapons in Space Marine 2. So you're really only getting this up for like, what, 3 or 4 seconds of actual shooting time because of the gun strike animation, maybe even less. And usually the enemy you just shot in the face with your gun strike is going to die to like your next hit anyways. So it really doesn't do a ton for you. This should be up to like 10 seconds in my opinion. Because if you look over here at the Sniper perk tree, because the Sniper is actually blessed, he has a perk called Exacting Focus, which is after a gun strike you deal 20% more range damage for 10 seconds. This is like a far better version of the Relentless Pursuit perk, because 10-second uptime is just way more useful even if you lose like 5% more damage. 20% damage is still super strong, and this one procs all the time. You could kill the guy with your gun strike and then move on to a new enemy, which is why this one is so much better. Tactical should really have like a rework on this perk, or I'll just change it to that effect in my opinion. But to be honest, we could just add new perks to Space Marine 2. That's something I want to talk about today. We could add more perks to Space Marine 2, because Space Marine 2 doesn't have to be limited to just like having 3 in every column and like 3 across every row here. You could do way more. There's nothing actually stopping Saber Interactive from adding in new perks. And this brings me to my second point, which is that the Assault class, they removed a perk from this class to add in Defense Mechanism. Contested health fades 50% more slowly. This used to be the perk over here on Vanguard, Retribution. After you are grabbed or knocked back, you deal 30% more melee damage for 20 seconds. You see, Saber Interactive is entirely aware that like some perks in this game are just not that good, so they just swapped out Retribution entirely because nobody was picking it on the Assault class. And I'm sure if you actually looked in the metrics of this game, nobody's picking this perk on the Vanguard either. But as far as the Assault goes, they swapped it out entirely. They gave him Defense Mechanism. Contested health fades 50% more slowly. I almost guarantee you these perks are used like 10 times more than Retribution used to be, which is why they swapped it out. Now, I don't know why we had to remove an entire perk from Space Marine 2's Assault class to give him an option like this. We could just add in more perks, because, you know, the big thing in a game like this is that you don't want it to be overly complicated, because Space Marine 2 is a fairly casual game. We also want to give players options. More options are almost always good, as long as they're not like too confusing. But like, really, is anyone's brain going to be hurt by having like 4 in this column instead of 3? I don't think so. I think 99% of players would be like totally fine with that. And players are like not so stupid that they can't figure that out in the first place. And the next perk I want to talk about here as far as bad perks go is Overcharge. Now, Overcharge is not a bad perk, but if you're unaware, past 10.3, the Overcharge perk is bugged currently. It only works on the Thunderhammer currently on the Assault class, as opposed to the Overcharge perk on the Bulwark class. It'll work on all the other weapons. And they have not fixed this for over a month. So not only do we have bad perks in this game that get completely replaced, we also have perks like Overcharge that simply do not function properly at all. There is nothing telling players in-game that this does not work with the charge attacks on the thrust jab for the power fist currently. You just have to go into game and be like, oh, my breakpoints just aren't working for some reason. That's really funny. I had people in my comments section ask me, like, where are you getting this information? How do you know that overcharge doesn't work? Because if you're not on PC, you cannot play in the testing arena for this game. You cannot go to like Nexus Mods to download the testing arena and see the actual damage numbers. Perhaps a testing arena will be coming out in like the next Battle Barge expansion they're doing, but before that, you can't actually test anything in this game. There is a ton of broken shit in Space Marine 2, there are a ton of bugged perks, and there is no way to actually know that they are bugged unless you look at a guide online or you're playing on PC and you download a mod. This is one of those cases. Now, as far as other bad perks go, famously, Vanguard had the perk here, Tenacity. After killing 7 enemies in rapid succession, diving kicks damage increases by 40% for 15 seconds. This perk was by far like a top 1 bad perks in all of Space Marine 2 on launch. They actually buffed this one. It used to take you 10 kills in rapid succession, but even then, a 10 kills in rapid succession was more like a it was like a global thing for all consecutive kill perks. So things like consecutive execution also took 10 kills in rapid succession rather than 7 now. They lowered it down to 7 for all these types of perks. This one kind of got like a pseudo buff off of that. Guess what? It still sucks ass. This is one of the worst perks in the entire game, and not only is this perk garbage, the perk up here, Zone of Impact, is one of the best perks on Vanguard that basically carries the entire class, and the perk down here, Tip of the Spear, is not as good as Zone of Impact, but like, you know, there's at least a choice to be made here. But like, as far as the actual metrics for this game go, I would not be shocked if Tenacity is taken like 10% of the time, and it's probably taken by like brand new players, and it's just one of those things that like the game just has this in here for like a year plus. For what reason? Does it really take us over a year in Space Marine 2 to have our Tenacity perk fixed, or like a Tenacity be reworked? I don't really think it should. That's my opinion, at least. Now, as far as perks like Grim Determination goes, when the grapple launcher is in cooldown, weapon damage increases by 15%. This weapon perk, this class perk may sound better than it is initially because, it sounds better initially than it actually is, because to trigger this perk, you have to use all of your grapnel charges. It will not trigger off a single one, and if you're running something like Tactical Prowess, you're actually working against yourself in this case, because you're going to be getting your grapnels back all the time, and Inner Fire over here will give you back more grapnels anyways, so this one actually gets worse the more CDR perks you're running. I think this one should just like function off of like a base grapnel, but like besides that, this one isn't as bad as say like Tenacity, but still like definitely needs a rework. Now, as far as things like Retribution go, after your grabber knocked back, you deal 30% more melee damage for 20 seconds. This perk, you see, this is a moment where Saber Interactive shows that they know that for a perk like this to have any function whatsoever, it needs to have like a 20-second uptime, because you don't have like a 20-second uptime on this, it's not going to do jack shit for you like 99% of the game. 30% more melee damage is a pretty chunky buff. Even if this is like 50%, I think that might be worth taking, because I don't know why Saber Interactive is so afraid of like buffing up your melee damage getting slapped around when things like consecutive execution will outright remove an Extremis spawn entirely. Now, as far as the Bulwark goes, Bulwark is another class that has completely blessed perks. The blessed perks of the Bulwark class are Steel Within, Armor Reinforcement, Scramble Targeting. Then we go up here to perks like Armor of Contempt. When you block a ranged attack, enemies with a 10-meter radius take the damage instead. This perk does dog shit damage. It is actually hilarious how low the damage of this perk actually is. I have seen people cope about this all the time. It's like, oh, it wipes out all the enemies around you. It doesn't. The damage is horrific on this. And on top of the bad perk in this column, the perk over here, Defensive Advantage, a perfectly timed parry or block creates a shock area for 5 seconds. Cooldown is 30 seconds. A 30-second cooldown on a 5-second shock area is ridiculous. Having a 30-second cooldown on anything in Space Marine 2 is pretty intense for like a core perk. When we look at like Steel Within, this one is active 100% of the time when you are below 50% HP, and Armor Reinforcement, this is functioning on every single gun strike in the game forever. So I don't know why we have to have this one sit like a 30-second cooldown for like the entire game's life cycle. It's just things like this, and if you wonder what Saber Interactive is actually balancing in this game, because we're over a year into Space Marine 2, guys. Space Marine 2 has been out for a goddamn year plus, and we still have perks in rows like this that have no function outside of a single build. I feel like things like this that say bulk carbines reload 20% faster and the weapon spread and recoil reduced by 15%, they should simply be implemented into the actual weapon perk trees because they are weapon specific perks. This is for a bulk carbine. Why is it in my core perk tree? I understand like these classes have access to all of these weapons, but what this does is it's like, okay, I'm going to take my bolt sniper rifle. What perk am I going to take my perk tree? Oh, it's always going to be Iron Grip, because Iron Grip is literally the only perk in this entire row here or column that does anything for my weapon. So it's like, it's a no-brainer pick, and I say this all the time. There are simply no-brainer picks in Space Marine 2. When you look at a perk like Squad Renewal, a headshot kill restores ability charge by 10% for any squad member. This perk enables you to take Purification, or, you know, the perk over here, Efficient Readiness, and nobody takes, or even Renewal here and get a 25% restore in your Camo Cloak. And Camo Cloak without one of these perks feels horrific. So there is pretty much no scenario where you are taking Purification and taking another team perk. So we look up here. But this should be like a base perk as far as I'm concerned. Like things like 10% restoration on a headshot kill for sniper, they should just be a base perk effect because there's no reason they shouldn't be. Because if you're not taking this perk and you take Purification, what the fuck are you doing? It's a real question. Like, who the hell is taking Marksmanship and taking Purification and not taking a Squad Renewal? Like, let's be honest. It's pretty much just like a no-brainer perk. And as far as other options go for perks in this game, we look at things like Commitment, a perfectly timed dodge using a jump pack dash restores jump pack's ability charge. This perk is good, but perks like this should be a baseline for the class because your jump pack dash is like almost unusable without this. Let's say like you live in a world where you're going to be using your jump pack dash and you do not have Commitment active. What are you getting off of using your jump pack dash on like a perfect dodge? Basically nothing. At best, you're getting like a slightly further away or like a little bit of extra damage off of Wings of Flame, and using an entire ground pound charge to do so. There's no world where you're ever going to be touching this ability without this perk. So things like this should be fundamentally built into the classes as far as I am concerned. I feel like Commitment is a perk where we really need to look at like what is Saber Interactive's balancing decision, or like what is their balance philosophy in this game, because we've gone over a year now where this perk is just fundamental to using your jump pack dash, and without it you will never touch the perk. So it's just things like this that are quite silly to me. I don't know why it's been this way for over a year, but Saber has just not touched this, and they have touched perks. Like, that's the real thing I want to talk about here, is that Saber Interactive has changed perks around in the past year. It's not like a unprecedented thing. They just haven't touched perks like this. Or to talk about like things like Ascension, jump pack leap deals damage to all enemies within the takeoff area. This perk is also garbage. It's been this way the entire time. Or if I want to talk about the worst perk in the entire game, in my opinion, is Coolant Reserve. If both of your squad members are incapacitated, defeated, or grabbed, your primary weapon will not overheat and you deal 15% more damage. This perk is fucking donkey ass bonko, what do they call it? Donkey Kong bongo cheeks. Is that the term? I believe that's the official term. You can actually read that one. The point is that Coolant Reserve is a trash perk. This one does literally nothing for you in this game 99% of the time. Guys, how many times have you ever had a moment in Space Marine 2 where both of your squad members are incapacitated, defeated, or grabbed? Not that often. Like, usually if you're the last brother standing, you have way bigger problems and you probably want something like the offensive capability or conversion field. But as far as 15% more damage and not overheating your primary, who gives a shit? Like, overheating your primary in Space Marine 2 hardly matters at all for like half the weapons in this game. And guess what? Let's say you're using one of like the most heat-heavy weapons in the entire game, which is the Heavy Plasma Incinerator. Oh, what's that? You're taking the perk here, Rapid Cooling. After killing 7 enemies in rapid succession, this weapon does not heat for 10 seconds. Cooldown is 15 seconds. This perk already does what this perk wants to do with like a far easier prerequisite on its own. So Coolant Reserve might quite possibly be the worst perk in the entire game. You might think to yourself, oh, okay, I'm going to take Coolant Reserve. I'm going to go into the menu over here in the launch bay, and I'm going to play my true solo without bots. Well, guess what? If you play true solo without bots in Coolant Reserve, you get absolutely nothing on the buff of this the Coolant Reserve perk. It does not trigger at all. So this literally will only trigger off of like your entire team being dead or downed, which is just such a garbage perk effect. And if we talk about other garbage perk effects like Bonds of Brotherhood, Bonds of Brotherhood is not a good perk, but Bonds of Brotherhood looks like the best perk in the entire game compared to this one, because this one actually does function. It will at least save you like 1 or 2 stims. It will help you occasionally. So I don't really know why we have to have a perk like this, or even Bonds of Brotherhood, just be not reworked for like a year plus. And as far as sniper trees go, actually, let's just talk about prestige perk tree. I know we're a little bit scatterbrained here, but let's talk about the prestige perk trees. So prestige perks were like one of the biggest perk additions in the entire game. A lot of these perk effects are pretty boring, but even if they weren't boring, a lot of the perk effects are once again no-brainers. Things like exigency charge, when your health is less than 25%, ability charge regenerates 15% faster. This perk is pretty goddamn awful. There's like no time as a tactical, especially, you want to be sitting below 25% HP. That's this thing, like you're gonna get 15% faster regen of your auspex. Like what are you auspexing so often that you want to have a 25% HP to like get a 15% buff? This should be like a 50% HP or less, in my opinion, perks like this, and even then I still wouldn't take it. And this is like not the worst tree ever, it's just a boring one. If you want to look at like a bad tree, let's take a look at Assault. So Assault has, like, actually, not even Assault. Assault has, yes, it is. So Commendation. Reviving a squad member fully restores jump packs charge and all armor segments. Like, what are we cooking here? Imagine you take this over Unyielding Oath. When charging a ground pound, you become invulnerable for 3 seconds. There is no universe that you want to take a Commendation perk over Unyielding Oath, let alone Fortitude, which is something like the only tank survivability this class has whatsoever, or range damage reduction, or range damage increase, or adrenaline boost, or hell, even a perfect block or perfect parry window increase. Having a perfect block and perfect parry window increase is not really that good in Space Marine 2. You know what it is? It is far better than having a perk that only functions on you reviving a squad member. So basically, a perk like this requires your friend to eat shit. And like, why would you want your friend to eat shit for you to benefit off of their death? Like, that's basically what it is. It is you having your friend die in your game. You can get like a minor buff to your CDR when this class already cycles into hordes over and over as Zealous Blow. It just makes no sense. And we want to talk about some really bad prestige perk trees. Let's talk about the Heavy. So Heavy has what I think is probably the worst in terms of like choices. So Home Precision. Equip weapons maximum spread decreases by 25% when firing without aiming. This is a garbage perk for multiple reasons. In fact, the only use case scenario I can think of for Home Precision is if you are playing with the heavy bolt rifle, because if we look at pretty much every single heavy weapon in this game that benefits off of heavy stance, they all have perks like where is it here? They all have perks like heavy velocity. When in heavy stance, your shots charge 15% faster. Okay, so you always want to be in heavy stance. Or you look over at the Heavy Bolter here. Heavy Might is here twice, 15% damage buff twice over while in heavy stance, so you never ever want to hip fire this gun practically in your entire life. Heavy Bolt Rifle is only good for this perk because it has 0 heavy stance perks at all, and Heavy Bolt Rifle is also the worst perk in the entire, the worst weapon in the entire game for the heavy class already. Now, as far as perks like Duelist go, Perfect Parry and Perfect Block windows increases by 25%. These are noob trap perks on the Heavy especially, because Heavy is permanently locked to a balanced parry window. And what a balanced parry window will do to you, that's also not told to you in this game, is that it will give you a 10 frame negative startup on the, it will give you a 10 frame negative startup on your parry, which means you cannot perfect parry at the beginning of your parry window. And then after those negative frames are done and you can actually, you get past the negative frames, you will have an active parry window, like all the other weapons in this game. So let's just explain this a little bit more. So basically, for those of you who are unaware, I know a lot of people already know how balance works, but for people who do not know, a fencing weapon in this game has a 0 frame startup, which means as you hit the button in Space Marine 2, you will instantaneously get a parry from the fencing weapon. A balanced weapon has a 10 frame startup, which means it is literally impossible for you to perfect parry after you hit the button. You have to like do it preemptively. And block also has a 0 frame startup, but it has half the active windows of the balance of the fencing version. And balance has like, I believe it's a 30 frame window as opposed to the fencing's 40 for its active window. So once you have that active window going, that is when the Duelist perk actually activates, so you're only getting a benefit off of like the active window, so it does nothing for your preemptive parry, which is the worst part about the balanced parry window to begin with. Now, as far as things like exponential force go, melee damage increases by 100%. I have tried to build into melee heavy before, but it practically never works anyways because melee damage on this class. My biggest issue with prestige perks is that you can select 4 of these. So there are 4 good perks in practically every single window or every single prestige perk tree. But the issue is, the fact that you can pick 4 means that the 3 terrible ones are never to be picked at all. And if you have 3 options that are just awful and you can pick 4, what the fuck's the point? Like, why don't we have like 12 prestige perks? Wouldn't that be crazy, guys? What if we had 12 prestige perks to choose from and they were all good, and then you could pick 4 of the 12? And then you can make real build variety in this game and come up with some pretty interesting ideas, and maybe even hit some breakpoints. Imagine if more things in this game had like a give and take option, like the balance distribution here. Your primary weapon deals 10% more damage, but your secondary weapon deals 10% less damage. This is like one of the only perks in all of Space Marine 2, besides the Assault's Precision Strike here, that has a bonus and a negative. A lot of these things are just like straight buffs to you, and like it's like, okay, I want range damage reduction, I'll take Hammer of Wrath. Okay, I want ground pound damage increase, I'll pick Fighting Angel. So the point is that if you have Precision Strike, ground pound deals 100% more damage, but its radius is reduced by 50%. This is a really good perk, and you actually have to decide if you want to take this with Zealous Blow, because then you're missing out on a bit of other things like your radius to actually trigger your CDR. These are cool perk ideas. These are fun effects in Space Marine 2, because if you don't have any choices in a game like this, every build starts to feel the same, and classes like Vanguard run into this currently, because Zone of Impact Tactical Prowess is just the best combo on this class by far. And if you don't have both of these perks active, well, guess what? You're just not getting a ton out of this class, and it feels significantly worse than playing without it. So it's, or excuse me, it feels significantly better than playing without it, and like things like this just become a no-brainer. And build variety is what keeps builds alive in a game like this in the first place. So anyways, that is my massive tangent on perks in Space Marine 2. We didn't go through all of them, obviously, because that would probably take like 4 hours. But the point is, a lot of the perks in this game are still shit a year into the game's release, and Heavy's perk especially hasn't even been touched in forever. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. How would you rework the perks? Do you think the perk states in Space Marine 2 are good? And let me know what you think about the prestige perks. Do you think there should be more perks added into the game as like a baseline option? Because I think that would actually solve a lot of the build issues outside like weapon variation. If you like content like this, subscribe for more, and as always, take it easy. Bye.